Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Block. The title of my research proposal presentation is Exploring the Effectiveness of Hotspots Policing in a Disadvantaged Community. Here's a review of the content that will be covered for today. What's the problem? The problem this research seeks to examine is the potential for hotspots policing interventions to negatively impact communities and actually hinder crime control efforts in the long term. Hotspots policing is an intervention that has been largely celebrated by researchers as an effective strategy in reducing crime, where police focus their activities in areas where crime clusters and thrives. Unfortunately, this intervention commonly uses order maintenance approaches, which have been characterized as aggressive enforcement of minor offenses. Research has determined that actions carried out as part of order maintenance policing are perceived by individuals as unfair, which leads to negative consequences not originally intended by the intervention. Specifically, order maintenance policing approaches have been identified as a contributing factor to crime through its harmful impacts on community residents' perceptions of police legitimacy. Police legitimacy is determined by individuals' perceptions of police fairness and refers to the confidence and trust one has in the authority of police. When perceptions of police legitimacy are diminished, individuals lack confidence in the authority of police and mistrust them, which can actually contribute to crime in the long term. In light of these findings, this study will address the potential costs that can arise with hotspots interventions that use order maintenance approaches by examining their effects on residents' perceptions of legitimacy. Prior research on hotspots policing has primarily examined only its effect on crime, so here I will attempt to offer a more comprehensive assessment of hotspots policing effectiveness. The findings from this study can therefore inform the field of social work and criminal justice by offering either greater support for this intervention as a benefit for communities or greater understanding as to how this intervention can be improved to generate long-term crime control benefits. Literature review. Hotspots policing has been widely implemented based on its appeal among researchers and practitioners alike as an evidence-based policing practice. The majority of prior research has revealed that hotspots policing does in fact reduce crime. However, evaluating this intervention also requires expanding our definition of efficacy to consider the role of police legitimacy as it predicts an individual's willingness to comply and cooperate with law enforcement. Research has found that place-based policing interventions that incorporate at least one element of fair and respectful dialogue interaction can actually improve the strategy's crime control benefits because individuals' perceptions of police are enhanced. The topic of legitimacy especially deserves attention as order maintenance approaches in hotspots have links to officer behaviors that are often perceived as biased and harassing by those who are on the receiving end of them. In Gaw and Brunson's examination of order maintenance approaches, they found support for their hypothesis that there would be a link between low perceptions of police legitimacy and enhanced beliefs in the need for self-protective behavior, which was associated with increased risk of police scrutiny. Essentially, what this means is that officer activities led people to mistrust them, and in turn, they relied on themselves for protection, which increased negative police attention because they felt as though they were a threat. This continued to further reduce these individuals' trust in the police, continuing the cycle. Findings from Gaw and Brunson demonstrate and indicate how important it is for agencies of criminal justice to recognize the dissatisfaction of an area as they attempt to control crime. Because if they don't, community attitudes can actually lead to cycles of violence since they do not feel supported or trusting of the police. Overall, we know that hotspots policing interventions do have the ability to reduce crime. However, there are some limitations that need to be addressed. Research on the impacts of this intervention on police-community relations and perceptions of legitimacy is largely scant, and the conclusion from studies that have examined these issues are generally mixed. This research seeks to fill these gaps to inform policy options of policing interventions that attempt to restore not only community safety, but community attitudes towards law enforcement. This current study seeks to extend prior research by comprehensively assessing the long-term effectiveness of hotspots policing interventions. The following hypothesis will be used for the study. Will the receipt of order maintenance policing interventions at Adamsville crime hotspots reduce residents' perceptions of police legitimacy? Research methods. This proposed study will be using an A-B design. This design was chosen because of its use of baseline measurements, which will allow full observation of the relationship between the independent and dependent variables, which is especially important given the complexities that can come with assessing a measurement such as perceptions. Data will be collected from either in-person or over-the-phone interviews. The independent variable for this study is order maintenance policing at Adamsville crime hotspots, and the dependent variable will be Adamsville residents' perceptions of police legitimacy. Possible confounding variables are the community's crime rate, its level of informal social control, and its racial composition. All of those variables can be addressed through controls and statistical models. 3 baseline measures A will be taken prior to the start of the policing intervention to establish the baseline of the community's perceptions. During the intervention phase, B, 3 additional measures will be taken every 3 months, and a final measure will be taken at the conclusion of the intervention. The community of Adamsville will receive an additional 5 hours of police attention per week over the course of 1 year that is focused on aggressive order maintenance activities where officers are trained to never ignore incidents of disorder. The dependent variable, police legitimacy, represents respondents' opinions of the police and the effectiveness of their law enforcement. It will be collected through survey data and operationalized using a scale of questions previously determined to have high reliability and validity. The following 4 survey questions will be included to determine respondents' perceptions of police legitimacy. At the conclusion of 12 months of order maintenance policing in the Adamsville crime hotspot, it is expected that residents' perceptions of police legitimacy will be reduced. Thus, residents will be more distrusting and will have less confidence in the effectiveness of officers' law enforcement. It is likely that in the context of 1, intensive police-initiated interactions that appear to discriminately suspect wrongdoing from certain members within the community, 2, aggressive sanctioning efforts for minor offenses, and 3, perceived harassment, individuals will generally perceive police actions as biased. Existing research allows us to predict the consequences of these behaviors will in turn leave this community even more susceptible to future criminal reactions as residents will not feel confident relying on and will be less willing to comply with police. The greatest strength of this research is its ability to address the costs associated with hotspots policing interventions, which prior research has neglected to examine. Cynical attitudes toward police officers allow individuals to reject police intervention offers and rely on personal methods of conflict resolution, which only increases levels of violence and attract the very police activities that further break down legitimacy. Police agencies and concerned practitioners can therefore utilize these findings in their development of appropriate interventions that are sensitized to the needs of the most damaged communities. Although this examination of the Adamsville community fills gaps in research, there are several areas in which it is limited. For instance, this study will only address 1 geographical area, leaving future research an opportunity to examine these effects in a variety of contexts. Additionally, since this study will not inform us as to how long these perceptions of police legitimacy will be damaged, future studies can examine if these perceptions will be restored to their baseline. If so, after what time? If not, then what actions can be taken by police to improve perceptions of legitimacy? My hope is that this research has revealed the danger in narrowly focusing the outcomes that are examined with an intervention, because key unintended consequences could be concealed if we do remain with this narrow focus.